Now to the latest on the mysterious death of the Mississippi teenager. His name, of course, Nolan Wells.
For 2 weeks, one name has carried more weight in this case than almost anything else, precisely because so little was actually known about the person attached to it. 2 people were with Nolan Wells in his final confirmed minutes on Horn Island. His friends, and a young woman they only ever referred to by her first name. For nearly that entire stretch, one of those 2 accounts stayed almost completely out of public view, while the other got repeated so many times it started to sound like settled fact. Tonight that changes, because what Katie says happened does not match what Nolan's friends have told investigators. And a family that has already lost their son now has to sit with the possibility that somebody, somewhere in this story, isn't telling them the truth. Let's start with how her name entered this case in the first place, and the fear that came attached to it. Nolan had a conversation with a young woman on the beach that afternoon. His friends referred to her only as Katie. That's where the confirmed information stopped, for a long time. Her identity wasn't in the first wave of coverage, wasn't in the family legal team's early statements. While speculation online chased pool party photos and out-of-context clips, the one person who may have spoken with Nolan last sat almost entirely unidentified, likely unaware her name would eventually matter this much to strangers she'd never met. Part of the reason traces back to the very first night he went missing. According to someone on the phone with Christine Wansley that night, Katie's name came up almost by accident, mentioned as someone Nolan had wanted to stay behind with. Then came a detail that made an already terrifying night considerably worse. Word that Katie herself might be missing too, with nobody on that call able to say who she actually was or where to even start looking. A mother already searching for one missing child, suddenly told there might be 2, with no name and no number to attach to the second one. That particular fear turned out to be unfounded. Katie was never missing. She'd left the island safely that day on a different boat and had been reachable the entire time. Confirmation of that came not from police, not from Nolan's friends, but from her own mother, Gracie McCormick, who posted publicly to correct the record once speculation about her daughter started spreading online in ways she never expected. According to McCormick, her daughter spent time with Nolan on the island, and the 2 parted ways sometime that afternoon. Her daughter has no knowledge of anything that happened to him afterward. She said goodbye. She got on a different boat. She went home, to a mother who had no idea her daughter's name would soon sit at the center of one of the most talked about cases in the country. If that were the whole story, it would end there quietly. It doesn't, because attorney Ben Crump says Katie's account of that final conversation is specific and hasn't wavered, and it directly conflicts with what Nolan's friends have said. According to Katie, Nolan told her he was planning to rejoin his friends and get back on the boat before it left. According to the friends themselves, Nolan told them the opposite, that he intended to stay behind on the island with Katie, entirely by his own choice. Both statements cannot be accurate. Let me be very clear about what that actually means. If Katie's version holds up, something happened in the space between Nolan stating his intention to leave and the boat pulling away without him. Something interrupted whatever plan he had, and nobody has explained what. If the friend's version holds up, Nolan made a deliberate, conscious choice to remain alone on a remote barrier island as his only ride home departed, which raises an entirely different question about what happened to him afterward, alone, without the group he'd spent the day with. This isn't a theory pulled from a comment section. It's a direct contradiction between 2 people who were both there, describing Nolan's last documented words in 2 ways that cannot be reconciled. As of this recording, nobody, not the family, not investigators, not anyone with actual authority, has resolved it. Nolan's parents are left holding 2 versions of their son's final choice, unable to know which one is real. There's a particular kind of pain in that specific uncertainty, different from grief itself. Grief has a shape. This is the loss of even knowing your own son's last decision. Now, beyond that conversation, there are smaller inconsistencies the family has raised publicly, the kind of details that would never make a headline alone, but add weight the longer you sit with them. Start with something as simple as a piece of clothing. The official police report lists Nolan wearing black shorts. According to Christine, a young woman who was on the island that day reached out and shared photos showing him in blue shorts, not black. On its own, that sounds like nothing, a clerical slip. But for a mother who no longer has the ability to simply ask her son what he was wearing that day, it isn't a footnote. It's a thread, and once you start pulling on one thread in a case built almost entirely on other people's memories, you can't help but look for the next one. Then there's the matter of Nolan's car. While his parents were still holding on to hope, they went to retrieve it from a friend's driveway, a task that should have taken minutes. A friend came to the door claiming he couldn't find the keys. He went back inside to check again. Minutes passed. Eventually, the keys turned up exactly where another person, overheard on a phone call, happened to mention they'd been the entire time sitting on top of an Xbox inside the house. For a family already desperate for a straight answer, a delay like that doesn't read as coincidence. It reads as friction, appearing at the exact moment they needed something to be simple. And then there's the phone itself. According to a family friend who helped track the device down using a monitoring app, Nolan posted to Snapchat almost every day, a habit so consistent it barely registered until it stopped. In the 24 hours before he disappeared, that activity went completely silent. No updates, no posts, a silence everyone close to him agrees wasn't like him. And when the device was finally located, one more inconsistency surfaced. The location tied to the account didn't match the place where the phone itself was ultimately found. None of these details, taken individually, tell us exactly what happened to Nolan Wells. But together, according to the people who loved him most, they're the reason this family says they cannot simply accept the official account as complete. Now let's walk through what the track data actually shows, because this is the one part of the story that doesn't depend on anyone's memory or loyalty. At 9:56 that morning, the boat carrying Nolan and his friends left its dock. By 11:14, it had reached Horn Island. For several hours, the group stayed together. At 4:31 that afternoon, according to the Mississippi Department of Marine Resources, the boat left Horn Island. Nolan was not on board. It returned to its original dock, and then, rather than staying there for the night, it kept moving. At 5:52 p.m., it traveled into Fort Bayou. By 6:06, it was back at the dock. Later, at 7:19 p.m., its track position shifted once more to the Fort Bayou boat launch, where it was taken out of the water and moved overland to a residence in Biloxi owned by the boat's owners, more than 70 miles from where the day began. For separate movements, recorded automatically, after the moment Nolan was left behind. That sequence, tracked without input from anyone connected to this case, is the exact window investigators are still working to explain, and the exact window his parents replay in their minds, searching for what might have happened inside it. Now, to where the official process stands. On July 15th, Christine and Elmore sat down face-to-face with Jackson County District Attorney Angel Mears Mrath, their first direct meeting with her office since Nolan's body was found. Crump described it as respectful and candid. Out of that meeting came confirmation that once the DA's investigation wraps, its findings go to a grand jury. Let me be precise about what that phrase actually means, because it tends to carry more emotional weight than it holds. A grand jury referral is not a verdict. It is not a formal accusation against any one person. It doesn't mean charges have been filed, and it doesn't mean investigators have concluded a crime took place. It means the case has reached a procedural point where its findings will be formally reviewed to determine whether charges are warranted at all. It's a mechanism, movement, not resolution. Crump also used the moment to correct something that had spread widely online, the claim that the FBI had effectively taken over this investigation. According to an official statement from FBI Jackson, the Bureau has assisted with specific elements of the case, largely centered on threats made against people connected to the investigation, threats that cross state lines and therefore fell under federal jurisdiction. The Jackson County Sheriff's Office remains the lead agency throughout. The FBI's involvement has been support, not command. And then there's Nolan's phone, the piece of evidence his family has pointed to from nearly the beginning as something that might hold real answers. At the July 15th press conference, both sides agreed to a joint inspection, experts representing the family working alongside experts connected to the official investigation, examining the device together rather than separately. Attorney Eric Hers is leading that effort for the family, working with former law enforcement professionals brought in specifically for the technical work. As of this recording, that inspection hasn't happened yet. The family is still waiting, the way they've been waiting in one form or another since the night their son didn't come home. Before we close, two pieces of this case deserve a direct correction, because both spread widely and both shaped what people believed long before anyone checked whether they were true. The first involved a photograph. An image of Nolan at a pool party began circulating after his body was found, and for a disorienting stretch, a significant number of people genuinely believed it proved he'd been alive after July 4th. Rolling Stone confirmed, through image metadata and an account from his friend Tristan Shepard, that the photo had actually been taken on June 27th, a full week before Nolan ever went to Horn Island. It had simply been uploaded online on July 5th, which is what caused the confusion about its timing in the first place. The second involved the video many believed captured Nolan in an argument shortly before he vanished, treated online as though it were the missing piece of the entire case. Shepard addressed that one directly to. The voice on the recording, he confirmed, was his own, not Nolan's. Let me be very clear about why that correction matters. Both pieces of misinformation have now been corrected clearly and on the record by the person whose account is actually behind them. What's left once you strip them both away is what was always underneath, the timeline, the unresolved contradiction between two first-hand accounts, and a family still waiting, patiently and publicly, for someone to give them real answers instead of theories. This case is still open, in every sense unfinished. The grand jury hasn't concluded anything. The phone inspection agreed to weeks ago still hasn't happened. And the contradiction between Katie's account and the account given by Nolan's friends still hasn't been resolved by anyone with the actual authority to resolve it. Nolan's family also had to do something no parent should have to plan for. Christine announced her son's homegoing celebration will be held Monday, July 20th, at Centerpoint Church in Ocean Springs, the same community that watched him grow up and play football. It's worth remembering, underneath every headline and every piece of track data, that this is still fundamentally a family grieving a son in front of an audience they never asked for. Every detail in this case is being absorbed not just by strangers online, but by two parents who will carry whatever gets said about their son for the rest of their lives. And somewhere in Ocean Springs tonight, there's also a young woman named Katie who never asked to become part of a national story, living with the knowledge that her final conversation with Nolan Wells has become one of the most scrutinized exchanges in the country, even though by every account she has done nothing but tell investigators what she remembers. That's the part of this story easy to lose underneath the grand jury language and the GPS timestamps. Underneath all of it, there is still just a family in a small Mississippi community trying to understand how a holiday boat trip with friends ended with their son gone. This case is not closed. When the phone inspection actually happens, when the grand jury moves, when either version of that final conversation gets resolved by someone with the authority to resolve it, we will be here to cover it. If this is the kind of reporting you want, sourced, verified, nothing added for shock value, subscribe. We'll bring you the facts as we actually get them, and not a moment before.